6 days after they cracked my chest open to fix a valve that had been killing me slow, I sent my daughter a text. One line. "Sweetheart, the doctor cleared me. Can you come get me?" She read it. I could see the 2 little check marks go blue. Then nothing for 11 minutes. Then, "Dad, Roger and I have the Hendersons coming for dinner tonight. Can't you just grab a lift?" I sat in that hospital chair with the paper gown still on and read that message 3 times. Roger was my son-in-law. He had been living in my house for 4 years, eating my food, running my water, sleeping under my roof while he went back and forth between sales jobs he never kept longer than 8 months. My daughter had moved back in when their apartment lease fell through, and I had said yes without a second thought, because she was my daughter, and that is what fathers do. And now she could not drive 20 minutes to bring me home because the Hendersons were coming for dinner. I put the phone in my lap and looked out the window at the parking lot. A teenage boy was helping an older woman into a minivan, carrying her overnight bag, tucking her coat around her legs before he closed the door. I watched him jog around to the driver's side. He looked maybe 17. He did not look like he had anywhere more important to be. A nurse came in. Young woman, kind eyes. She looked at the phone in my lap and then at my face, the way nurses do when they already know. She asked if my ride was on the way. I told her my daughter was tied up, but I would manage. She looked at me the way you look at someone carrying more than they should. She asked if I had considered a medical transport. I told her I was fine. I smiled the kind of smile you give to end a conversation. I am Theodore Marsh. I am 68 years old. I worked 31 years as a structural engineer for the county, bridges mostly. I spent 3 decades making sure that when a family drove across a body of water, they made it to the other side. That is not a small thing. I built something real. And when my wife Ruth passed 4 years ago from pancreatic cancer, I kept the house on Birchwood Lane because she had loved every inch of it. The oak cabinet she picked herself. The garden in the back she planted from seed. I kept it because letting go of it felt like letting go of it. Felt like go of her. I called a lift. The driver did not say much. The fare was $22, and I tipped him $10 because he helped me with the door without being asked. When we pulled up to Birchwood Lane, the driveway had 2 cars in it. My daughter's Accord and a new one, a silver SUV I'd never seen, still with paper plates. I walked to the front door slowly. Every step pulled at my sternum. The incision ran from just below my collarbone to my stomach, held together with surgical tape and something that felt like stubbornness. I reached for my key. It did not fit. I stood there for a moment, thinking I had grabbed the wrong one. I tried again. The lock cylinder felt different, stiffer, new hardware, brushed nickel. Someone had changed the lock on my front door while I was in a hospital bed. I knocked, then knocked harder. I could hear the television inside. Voices. Laughter. My daughter opened the door. She had a dish towel over her shoulder and a wine glass in her hand. She looked at me the way you look at a delivery you forgot you ordered. "Oh, Dad, you made it." She stepped back and let me in. The house did not smell like my house. Ruth used to burn cinnamon candles in the fall, and even after she was gone, the smell lived in the walls. Now it smelled like whatever diffuser my daughter had plugged in, something synthetic and floral that made the back of my throat feel coated. They had rearranged the living room, my reading chair, the brown leather one I had bought at an estate sale in 2009 and spent 2 Saturdays conditioning, was gone. In its place was a bucket-style accent chair in cream linen that looked like it came from a catalogue for people who did not actually sit. Roger was at the kitchen table with a man I did not recognize, both of them with beers. He glanced up when I came in. "Ted," he said. "Not hi, not good to see you, just my name like a label." My daughter handed me a glass of water and told me the guest room was set up for me. The guest room. The house had 3 bedrooms. Ours, mine and Ruth's, was at the end of the hall, the one with the bay window that looked over the garden. It was the room where Ruth had taken her last breath, with my hand around hers. The guest room was the small one at the top of the stairs, with a slope ceiling. I had built it out myself in 1997 for when her parents visited. I asked about my bedroom. My daughter looked at the dish towel instead of at me. She said Roger had been using it as a home office since things got complicated with space. She said she meant to tell me. She said the guest room was really quite nice. She had put fresh towels in there. I gripped the water glass and walked upstairs. The guest room was fine. A bed, a dresser, a window that looked out at the neighbour's fence. My clothes were there, folded in a single drawer like I was a visitor passing through. My books were stacked on the floor. On the dresser was Ruth's photo, the one from Yellowstone, 1998. Her laughing with her hair in the wind. They had at least moved that. I sat on the edge of the bed. The incision throbbed in slow time with my heartbeat. I was 68 years old, and I'd just been discharged from 6 days of cardiac surgery and given a glass of water and pointed upstairs. Through the floor, I could hear them laughing. I did not eat dinner that night. No one knocked on the door to ask. I took my medication with water from the bathroom tap and lay down in the dark and listened to the sounds of my own house moving around me, like a place I no longer belonged. I woke up at 3 a.m. The house was quiet. I lay there staring at the sloped ceiling, and I heard them through the vent. The old ductwork in this house carried sound the way old houses do. Everything connected, nothing private. My daughter's voice, low but not low enough. "We can't keep doing this indefinitely." Roger answered, "I know. The thing is, once the equity clears, we won't have to. He's not going to just hand us the house. He doesn't have to hand it. If we can get him to refinance and put us on the deed, or if something happens and the estate, just, Roger, I'm not saying anything. I'm saying his heart is bad, Lindsay. The doctors said so. We just have to be patient." Silence. I looked at Meadowbrook, her voice again quieter. "The reviews are actually decent. Private room, activities, a memory care wing if it comes to that. He doesn't have memory issues. He doesn't yet." I lay in the dark and stopped breathing for a moment. Meadowbrook was a facility out on Route 9. I had driven past it 100 times. Beige building, beige parking lot, a sign with a faded sun on it. They were waiting for me to die or decline, whichever came first. And if neither came fast enough, they were going to engineer it. I closed my eyes. I thought about Ruth. I thought about the night she was diagnosed and how she had held my hand in the car outside the oncologist's office and said, "We are not going to fall apart." We did not fall apart. We held each other up for 14 months until she couldn't hold anymore. And then I held her alone, and I did not fall apart then either. I was not going to fall apart now. The next morning I came downstairs early, before either of them was awake. I made coffee in my own kitchen, in the pot I had owned for 11 years. And I sat at the table and I thought clearly for the first time since the surgery. My chest hurt. My hands were still a little weak. But my mind was sharp. I owned this house free and clear. I had paid off the mortgage in 2016. The deed had my name on it, and my name only because when Ruth passed, the attorney had transferred it to me. I had a will. I had a financial advisor named Cliff Odom at a firm downtown, who had managed my retirement accounts for 15 years and who I trusted with my actual life. I called Cliff at 7:45. He answered on the second ring, which told me he was already at his desk. I told him everything. He was quiet for a moment after I finished. Then he said, "Theodore, are you somewhere private?" I was in the backyard in Ruth's garden, sitting on the iron bench she had picked out at a roadside antique place in Virginia. The roses had gone leggy and unpruned, but the bench was exactly where she had left it. "I'm outside," I said. "Go ahead." Cliff said there were things we could do. Legal things. Structures that would protect my assets clearly and completely, and would eliminate any ambiguity about who controlled what. He used the words irrevocable trust, and said them carefully, like a doctor explaining a diagnosis. He told me to come in that afternoon if I could manage it. I said I could manage it. I went back inside and dressed slowly, every movement deliberate, and came downstairs with my jacket on. My daughter was in the kitchen with her coffee, scrolling her phone. She looked up. "Where are you going?" "Errands," I said. "Dad, you just had surgery. You shouldn't be driving." "I'm taking a lift," I said, like last time. I watched something cross her face. Not guilt, just calculation. She smiled. "Okay, text me when you're back. I'll make soup for lunch." I did not text her. Cliff met me in his office on the 14th floor of the building downtown. He had the documents drafted by 2 o'clock. He walked me through everything in plain language, the way he always did. That was why I had trusted him for 15 years. He told me what the trust would do, who would be named, what would happen to the house, and the accounts and the pension in the event of my death or incapacity. He told me who would serve as successor trustee. He also told me about something else, something I had not considered but which, once he described it, felt exactly right. He called it a recorded covenant. It was a legal restriction that would be attached to the deed and would follow the property regardless of who owned it in the future. It stipulated specific conditions under which the property could or could not be used, transferred, or sold. In my case, Cliff suggested we frame it to ensure that any future transfer would route through the trust, meaning through me, or after me, through the trustee I named, not through a deed of gift or a quiet refinance that someone pressured me into. "You're building a wall around yourself," he said. "I'm an engineer," I said. "I know how walls work." He laughed. It was good to laugh. I also told him about Meadowbrook. He nodded, and then he said something I wrote down in the small notepad I had brought. "Document everything, Theodore. Dates, times, exact words if you can. This is called evidence." I bought a small recorder at an electronics store on the way home. It was the size of a thumb drive. I clipped it inside my shirt pocket. Over the next 4 days, I let them be comfortable. I came down for meals, slowly, moving like a man who was struggling more than he was. I let Roger hold the door open for me. I thanked my daughter for the soup, even the nights when it was clearly from a can. I watched the television. They had moved to where my reading chair used to be and said nothing. I mentioned once, quietly, that the paperwork from a hospital was confusing me, that there were documents about the estate I did not understand, that I might need help. Roger perked up at the word estate. "What kind of documents?" he asked. "Financial things. The will. I'm not sure it's set up the right way. Cliff says there might be tax issues." Roger looked at my daughter. My daughter looked at the table. "We could help you figure that out," she said. "We just want to make sure you're taken care of." "That means so much," I said, and I let them believe it. On the 5th day, I asked my daughter to sit with me in the living room. I told her I was worried about the house, about the probate process, about what would happen if I had another cardiac event. I let my voice shake a little, not much, just enough. I said I wanted to do the right thing for the family. She reached over and held my hand. "We just want you to be safe, Dad." Roger had been standing in the doorway the whole time. I could feel him without looking. I said I thought maybe we should talk to someone about the deed, about possibly restructuring things so there was less confusion if something happened to me. "Like putting us on the deed," Roger said, stepping into the room. "Something like that," I said. "I just don't know the right way to do it." "I actually know a guy," Roger said. "Attorney friend. We could call him tomorrow." "That would be wonderful," I said. I smiled the smile that ended conversations. That night I called Cliff again and told him to have everything finalized and ready for the following week. I told him the date and time I was thinking. He said he would have his own notary there, and that he was bringing his paralegal who had 20 years of experience and a face that could stop a clock. He also said one more thing. He said, "Theodore, I want you to think carefully about what you want the outcome of this to be, not just the legal outcome, the personal one." I sat with that for a while. I thought about my daughter, the girl who used to bring her homework to my workshop and sit on the stool while I drafted plans for things that had to hold weight. She had been bright and funny and genuinely kind once. I did not know when Roger had become the center of gravity in her life, pulling everything toward him, but I knew she had made choices. She was not a child. She was 41 years old. I thought about the covenant and the trust and the wall Cliff had helped me build, and I thought about Ruth's garden. I went out there at dusk, in the low October light. The roses really had gone to pieces, long canes arting off in every direction with no purpose. But the climbing rose she had trained up the back fence, the pale yellow one she had bought as a bare root stick in a plastic bag and coaxed into something magnificent, that one was still reaching, still finding its way along the wood slats she had nailed up herself with a staple gun and stubbornness. I sat on the iron bench and I made my decision. The following Saturday, I told my daughter I had thought it over and I wanted to move forward with what we had discussed. She hugged me. It was the first time she had hugged me since I came home. I noticed it the way you notice something you've been missing without quite naming it. Roger made calls. His attorney friend, a man named Galvin, came by Sunday afternoon. He was younger than I expected. He put his briefcase on Ruth's dining table and spread out papers he had prepared. Cliff was not there. Not visibly, but everything Cliff had told me was in my head, annotated. Galvin explained the structure he was proposing. Quit-claim deed, my name off, both their names on. He dressed it in language about estate simplification and tax efficiency. Roger nodded at every third sentence. My daughter sat very still. I asked Galvin a few questions, mild questions, the kind a confused older man might ask. He answered them with the confidence of someone who thought he was the smartest person in the room. I let him think that. Then I picked up the pen, and I set it back down. Before I sign anything, I said, I want to read you something. I reached into my jacket pocket and unfolded a piece of paper. It was a transcript. 3 paragraphs, typed, dated, time-stamped. The words, once the equity clears, we won't have to, appeared in the first paragraph. Meadowbrook appeared in the second. He doesn't have memory issues yet, appeared in the third. I read it aloud in my regular voice, not angry, not shaking, just a man reading. The room went quiet. Galvin stopped writing. My daughter's face went the color of old chalk. Roger stood up. He pointed at me. That's... You recorded us in our own home? In my home, I said, which as of 11 days ago has a new lock on the front door that I did not authorize. I have that documented as well. Roger said several things in a row that I will not repeat. His voice got loud. My daughter said his name twice, then stopped. I folded the transcript and put it back in my pocket. I picked up the pen again. I signed the paper in front of me. But it was not Galvin's paper. I had palmed it off the table while Roger was raising his voice and replaced it with the document Cliff had prepared, the one formalizing the irrevocable trust, the recorded covenant, and a clause explicitly barring any transfer, refinancing, or encumbrance of the property without the written consent of the successor trustee, who was Cliff himself. Galvin looked at the paper I had signed. He read it. He read it again. He closed his briefcase. I can't notarize this, he said. It's not what we... No, I said. It's not what you drafted. But it is what I signed. And I had it witnessed yesterday at Cliff Odom's office with a licensed notary and 2 witnesses. This is the recorded copy. What you have there is the third. The county clerk has the original. Roger turned to my daughter. She was looking at the table. She would not look at either of us. Roger left the room. I heard the front door open and close. A minute later, through the window, I watched the silver SUV back down the driveway. My daughter sat across from me for a long time. The silence was not empty. It was full of everything that had accumulated since Ruth died, since she had brought Roger home, since the slow erosion had started. I didn't know he was going to say those things, she said finally. Her voice was quiet. About Meadowbrook. I didn't know. You were there, Lindsay. I was half asleep. She stopped. She started again. I thought we were just making a plan. For me, I said. You were making a plan for me, without me. She pressed her hands flat on the table. They were trembling. What happens now? She asked. That depends on you, I said. Not on Roger, not on Galvin, on you. I told her the house was mine and would remain mine. I told her she was welcome to stay while she figured out what she needed to figure out, but that certain things were going to change. She was going to start paying a fair rent, or she was going to find other arrangements. Roger was not welcome back. Those were not negotiations. She cried. I let her. I did not harden against it, and I did not soften it away. I sat with her the way you sit with someone who needs to feel the weight of a thing. After a while, she asked if I hated her. No, I said, but I stopped pretending everything was fine, and I need you to stop too. She nodded. It was a small nod, but it was real. Roger did not come back that night, or the next. By the end of the week, my daughter told me he had taken a room at a friend's place. She said it like she was not sure what it meant yet. I told her she did not have to know what it meant right now. I moved back into the master bedroom. I took my time doing it, folding things, placing them where they belonged. The bay window looked out over the garden. I stood there for a few minutes in the morning light. I called the landscape service Ruth used to use. The owner remembered her. He said he would send someone out to look at the roses. 2 weeks later, Cliff called me to let me know the trust documents had been recorded with the county. Everything was in order. I thanked him and asked what I owed him. He told me to buy him lunch sometime. That afternoon, I drove out to the county offices and pulled the public record on my own property just to see my name there, clear and sole, on an official document. Theodore Allen Marsh. Owner. It is a small thing, maybe, but I'm an engineer. I spent 31 years caring about whether the structure underneath the thing was sound. I needed to see it in writing. I took the long way home. Down Route 9. I drove past Meadowbrook. The sign with the faded sun was still there. I did not slow down. My daughter and I are careful with each other now. It is not easy, and I do not pretend it is. Some nights she comes downstairs and we watch the news and drink tea and do not say much. Some nights she does not come down at all. We're both learning what it means to be honest with each other without the buffer of pretending. It is harder than pretending. It is also better. Last week she came out to the garden while I was watching the landscaper work on the climbing rose. The man was good, patient, knew what he was doing. He was showing me how to identify the good canes from the ones that had given up. My daughter stood beside me and watched for a while. Mum loved that one, she said. She did, I said. We stood there in the October light while the man worked, and the rose, still reaching, was coaxed back toward the fence where it had always wanted to go.